Patty melts, a simple lunch when I'm craving something big and beefy. It's so cheesy, loaded with onions and mushrooms. I sneak in a little bourbon, which is perfect to warm us up on a chilly afternoon. Let me show you how. Okay guys, I am a meat lover through and through, so I always crave a big beefy patty melt, and they're so simple on the Blackstone for either a lunch or dinner. Nice and simple. The one thing I do switch up often is the sauce for them. Whether I'm making them and adding my Betty's burger sauce, which is a favorite, or just ketchup, mayo, even some horsey sauce, it's always fun to get creative with what kind of sauce I'm adding to these. It keeps things different and fun each time I make them. On a chilly afternoon though, I love to sneak in a little bourbon, which is perfect to pair with the Duke's brown sugar bourbon mustard. It's so delicious. For each patty melt, I like mine big and beefy. I use 1 small sweet onion per sandwich sliced up, then 1 package of shiitake mushrooms chopped nice and small. These I love because they are savory, meaty yet buttery, one of my favorite mushrooms. For my meat, I'm always on the lookout for a good ground meat. I go half-pound patties per sandwich. I season with some sea salt, some coarse black pepper, and about 5 to 6 dashes of Worcestershire sauce. Who doesn't hate saying that word, but I got it out. Now, without working this meat too much, we mix it by hand, then loosely form our patties. I kind of go into a boxy oval shape to match our marble rye bread. Then I like to lightly make some indents, almost like when you're making focaccia bread. This is going to help them stay in their shape when they're cooking. Now we have all of our prep done. Let's preheat our griddle. I'm going on low heat to start. We'll melt some butter, dropping our onions to toss and coat well. We want these cooking down nice and low and slow. Once they begin to soften, kind of turning translucent, we add a little more butter, then drop down our mushrooms to toss in and coat very well with that butter and mix them throughout all of these onions. Adding a little more butter if needed, and then after a few minutes or so, since these are cut so tiny they don't need long at all, we're gonna add some sea salt just to season them up, and then some Worcestershire sauce, just a couple dashes, and a little bit of brown sugar to mix in. Let them stay on low heat for a few more minutes. Now for the fun part, we add a little bourbon. We let them finish for another minute or so in that bourbon, allowing that alcohol to cook off, and then we slide them aside to my first heat zone. We'll cut the heat off of those burners and just allow them to hang out and stay warm on some residual heat. Now my 2 right side burners go up to medium high. Now high heat would be perfect for smash burgers, but since we're doing patty melts, we want to let these cook a little bit slower. We melt down a little more butter. Sometimes I'll use bacon up, duck fat, ghee, or tallow fat, even whatever I feel like grabbing from my fridge, and then our patties go down. We allow these to just ride that hot griddle and sizzle away. That gives me time to get our deli swirl bread prepped. This mix of rye and pumpernickel is a must for me. Then a thin smear of Duke's mayo goes on the outside. This helps me achieve the most perfect crunchy toasting when the time comes. But first, our patties. They're beginning to change color up the sides. This is how I know it's time to flip. We've created the most beautiful sear and crust on these. Now, I do like to take my scraper and, without cutting completely through, make some slits across our patty. This to me just makes these stay nice and big and fat to fit our bread. And when I add our cheese down to these, all of that cheese melts within all of those little slits that we made. Today we're using some simple baby Swiss cheese. You can add a second or even a third kind of cheese to these. Blending some Swiss, cheddar, and American is probably one of my favorites. Now as that melts and finishes to cook, our bread goes down to toast up, mayo side down. We're adding this to our second heat zone that we have left on low heat still. I'll add a little extra extra baby Swiss to the bottom of our bread, this acting as our glue to keep our sandwiches together. We add our brown sugar bourbon mustard from Duke's, topping that off with our cheesy beefy patties now that they're done. And to assemble, just to keep things hot without burning any bread, I'm using a cooling rack to assemble, making room for our onions and mushrooms to slide over back onto that low heat just for a minute, tossing them to get them nice and hot before adding them to top off these beautiful patty melts. These are most certainly big and beefy and loaded just like I like them. Perfect for this chilly afternoon. Patty melts are always so good and so easy to make on the Blackstone, whether keeping them classic or mixing in a fun sauce. Homemade or store-bought, it doesn't matter. Let that inspire you to add a splash of fun to your onions and mushrooms. You can go bourbon or a beer. The possibilities are endless here. I hope to see you guys recreating this one at home. We cannot wait to see. Until next time, I'm Blackstone Betty, and I will see you guys for another recipe in the next video.